Tēnā koe. This webinar is about preparing an expression of interest for the 2019 funding round of the TLRI, the Teaching and Learning Research Initiative. We are Jo McDonald and Elisa Duval, the TLRI project leader and coordinator. We are based at NZCER. If you have any questions after watching this webinar, you can email us and you can find the contact details on the final slide. Today we will cover a brief overview of the fund and what to include in an expression of interest. This slide gives a brief overview of the TLRI. It is funded by the Ministry of Education, and NZCER coordinates and leads the initiative for the Ministry. All sectors are in scope for the TLRI: early childhood education, schooling and tertiary. Projects need to focus on teaching and learning and build knowledge in an area of strategic importance. All projects must be partnerships between researchers and practitioners, and we'll talk more about that in a moment. The funding round has a two-stage selection process. All applicants submit an expression of interest, but only those shortlisted submit a full proposal. It's a competitive fund. In the last 5 years, between 13 and 17% of expressions of interests have been funded. All projects must be partnerships between researchers and practitioners where their collective knowledge is applied to problems in practice. At the expression of interest stage, the partnership needs to be in place. You need to have had initial conversations between partners. If you're shortlisted and asked to submit a full proposal, the partnership will need to be fully established with a partnership agreement. Expression of interest proposals need to describe the nature of your proposed partnership, including naming early childhood centres, kura, schools, tertiary teams or other partners, and also describe the rationale for the partnership and why it's the right way for you to find answers to your research questions. You need to consider why you have this particular partnership and how it came about. You might tell us about that in your application. And you also need to consider how the partnership is guiding the questions. So it's not practitioners in a role as research participants or subjects, but they are participating as genuine partners. You also need to consider the collective expertise in the project team. The selection panel is looking for assurance that your team has research experience and capability to conduct the proposed research, and the practice experience and capability to ensure close connections to practice. Applications must be on the template available on the website as a Word document. Applications can be in Te Reo Māori or English. If you plan to submit an application in Te Reo Māori, we'd really appreciate it if you could let us know before the closing date. There is a cover sheet, and this includes a title and a 100-word summary. These should use plain language and give readers, who are the selection panel and the advisory board, a clear indication of the nature of your proposed project. There are then 2 substantive sections, and I will talk through each of those in the webinar. On the cover sheet, you're asked to indicate the amount of funding you're applying for. Before 2018, you were asked to indicate a project type, but that changed last year. The TLRI encourages applications for projects at different levels of funding, and the level of funding requested needs to be appropriate for the scale and scope of the proposed research. For example, a small pilot study or a large-scale project involving multiple sites. Those are 2 extremes, and there are obviously many examples in between. Projects will be funded for 1, 2 or 3 calendar years. Calendar years. The amount requested may be different for each year. You may request, say, $50,000 in the first year and $80,000 in the second year, for example. The maximum per year is $150,000, but we do not expect to see all applications asking for that maximum amount. Successful TLRI projects demonstrate high value in 3 areas. They have strategic value, research value, and practice value, and these underpin the criteria for selection. The expression of interest template is structured around these, with strategic value and practice value combined in one section and research value the focus of the other. So section 1 combines the strategic and practice value, and 3 TLRI principles are relevant. Those are on the slide and are also stated in the guidance. The TLRI particularly seeks to fund projects that deepen understanding about how to address current inequities in educational outcomes. For projects that focus on Māori or Pasifika learners, you need to consider how their participation supports them to be successful as Māori or Pacific people. Does your project validate Māori or Pacific ways of being and knowing? You have 2 pages for this section, and the template explains what you need to include. And that is showing here on this next slide. Use this section to state your research question or questions and make a convincing argument that these questions are important for Aotearoa New Zealand education at this time. Think about what evidence tells us that there is a problem, a challenge, an opportunity, or an important new question. Explain how your project aligns with current and future priorities for teaching and learning within and across the early childhood, school and tertiary sectors. Provide a clear rationale for the proposed project. This includes summarising previous literature on the topic and thinking about how you're building on the existing knowledge base. And it also includes the potential for the research to impact on teacher practice and student learning. Strong proposals will clearly convince the selection panel of why your project matters and how it fits the intent of the TLRI. Projects that are business as usual, for example, evaluating course changes at an institution, without demonstrating wider strategic and practice value, do not fit the intent of the TLRI. Similarly, while tool development may be one of the outputs from a TLRI project, and in fact could be a contributor to its practice value, the production of a tool without a core and significant research component is out of scope for TLRI funding. Section 2 is about research value. It focuses on your research design, including the partnership and the team. And you have 2 pages for this section. The template explains what you need to include. Use this section to describe the overall research design, the data collection methods, including the types of data you intend to collect and how these will be collected. This should include a clear focus on and measure of learner outcomes. Also use this section to describe how you will manage and analyse the data you collect and how the data will enable you to answer your research questions. Strong proposals have a clear line of sight from the research questions through to the data collection, the analysis, and back to the research questions. Be wary of proposing to collect too much data for the scope of the project. Strong proposals also have strong research questions that are answerable. Strong proposals also describe what decisions you will make about analysis and why. It is not enough to refer simply to a software package such as NVivo or SPSS. This section also asks you to describe your proposed partnership and highlight the principal investigator, relevant experience and qualifications. We do not need a full CV. We ask for a short paragraph about the principal investigator. The selection panel wants to see that a partnership is in place that has a clear rationale and a project team that is led by a principal investigator with relevant experience in leading similar research projects. They also want to see that there is appropriate research and practice experience across the team. You will have listed your team members and roles on the cover sheet, and do not need to repeat that information here. For those of you who have applied in the past, I'll just highlight some changes that we made last year. You don't need to include information about ethics and quality assurance. This is no longer assessed at the expression of interest stage, and it will be asked for in the full proposal. And also to highlight that the focus is particularly on the principal investigator or investigators at this EOI stage. More information about the team, including how you'll build research capability through, for example, mentoring less experienced researchers, will be asked for in the full proposal. Review of your proposal is important. The quality of proposals is high and the process is very competitive. Attention to detail is important. For example, ensuring you've done a spell check, have correct references, haven't gone over the page limits in the template, and that all necessary information is included. We encourage you to use peer review processes at your organisation if you're in an organisation that has those processes in place, or to find a colleague to review your expression of interest. More information is available on the TLRI website. You've hopefully already found the guidance and template there. You can also find a project page for every TLRI project that has been funded since its inception in 2004. Also on the TLRI website are 3 reports in the Project Plus series that look across and synthesise across projects on particular topics. If you read some of those documents and reports, it will give you more background into the sorts of projects that the TLRI funds. And finally, this slide tells you where you can get more information. It includes our contact details. You can also get advice, of course, from colleagues who have had successful applications, and from your research office if you work in an institution that has a research office. Expressions of interest are due by 5 p.m. on Thursday, the 2nd of May. The hard copies should be couriered to arrive at NZCER by this time. Please also email an electronic copy to tlri@nzcer.org.nz, that's on the slide, and courier the 3 hard copies. Thank you for listening. We hope you found the webinar useful, and we look forward to receiving your application on the 2nd of May.